ready when you are.
All right, we're going to reconvene from our closed session. City Attorney, any final actions this evening?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor. With respect to item number 1, the City Council authorized settlement in the matter of Limon versus Folsom.
All right, and with that, we'll adjourn the closed session, and we're going to go ahead and call to order the regular meeting. Will you please call the roll?
Yeah, council members Aquino.
Here.
Kozlowski.
Here.
Leary.
Here.
Rohrbach.
Here.
And Rathel.
Here. And if you all please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Attorney, any agenda updates this evening?
Mr. Mayor, no update for tonight. Thank you, sir.
All right, that brings us to business from the floor. If you're here to address the council on any unagendized items, now is the time for you to fill out a blue speaker card there in the back, and you'll be given 3 minutes to address the council. Do we have any speakers this evening?
You have one request to speak this evening under business from the floor. It'll be from Amanat Dalawal and Anushka Jasti. Come on down.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Amanat Dhaliwal, and I'm the president of Voices of Folsom, a club at Folsom High School. My name is Anushka Jasti, and I'm the vice president. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share the perspectives of Folsom residents through our student-led community initiative. Background and goals. Our goal with Voices of Folsom is simple. We want to create a space where residents, especially those whose voices often go unheard, can share their experiences and concerns. We focus on improving community well-being in areas like transportation, safety, entertainment, and city services. Each month, we attend council meetings to bring you updated insights gathered directly from residents. How we did this. To understand the community's priorities, we created questionnaires and distributed them throughout Folsom. We collected responses across different neighborhoods and age groups, and today we're sharing the major trends that we found. What residents love about Folsom. The overwhelming majority of respondents expressed appreciation for Folsom's strong sense of community, its safety, and its natural beauty. People value the cute, clean environment and the friendly family atmosphere. Importantly, most residents did not identify major negative issues in this area. Public transportation concerns. Transportation feedback was more mixed. About 59% reported no issues, but 41% of the respondents said they struggle with gaps in coverage, limited access in certain neighborhoods, or confusing systems. Residents also mentioned the reduction in school bus routes and expressed interest in more direct or express options. Suggestions for improving Folsom. When asked how Folsom could improve, the most frequent responses included the need for new schools to match the city's rapid housing growth, more activities and entertainment options for families and teens, improved traffic control, and again, expanded transportation options. Safety perceptions. Overall, residents feel safe in Folsom, but concerns came from a minority who pointed out to increasing housing density, traffic, and also visible homelessness. Many also credited friendly neighbors and the strong police presence for maintaining a sense of security within their communities. A notable number of responses pointed to a heavy congestion on East Bidwell, especially the bridge over the freeway. The corridor was consistently mentioned as one of the city's most traffic-dense areas. Thank you for your time and your continued efforts to make Folsom a safe and thriving community. We hope these insights help support future planning, and we look forward to continuing to bring the voices of residents to the table. Thank you.
Thank you both for coming out tonight. We appreciate that. All right, any other business from the floor?
You have no additional request to speak under business from the floor.
All right, that brings us to scheduled presentations. Will you please call item number 1?
Okay, your first item this evening is a presentation regarding the Leadership Folsom project. This is the Folsom Zoo Sanctuary Monument sign.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Rebecca Neese, Public Works Director, and I'm also a participant in the 2025-2026 Choose Folsom Leadership Folsom class. I'm just here to introduce my amazing teammates and classmates, Lori Tinty and Eric Bagley, to help do the presentation of this year's selected project. With that.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thanks for having us tonight. My name is Eric Bagley, along with my co-chair, Laura Tinty. We have the delight of getting to present our class project for Leadership Folsom this year. So for about the next hour and 15 minutes, we'd like to go through all the details for you. So what is Leadership Folsom? I know that a lot of you are familiar already, have some personal experience with it maybe, but we have 29 members in our class for 2025-2026. The focus is to develop our own leadership skills to meet with like-minded leaders who are interested in the benefit and prosperity and thriving of our community, as well as traditionally, each class will select a class project as well and work on that together. We began in October of this year, and October and November we spent time considering different projects that we might select. You can see some of the examples there. We had some criteria that was really important to us that we identified. We wanted something that would be impactful, something that would last longer than our class. We wanted something that had a clear scope so we could define success and knowing when it began and when it ended. We wanted something that would be able to get behind an area of the community that people have been recognizing a need around and see what strength and enthusiasm that we could bring to that project to support the city. We voted together at the end of November, and our finalist was the Folsom City Zoo Sanctuary. And we will be redoing the signage in the front. We hope as well to add a monument and potentially some interactive kiosks for the community to enjoy. And my co-chair, Laura, before she does that, could I just have, if you're a member of our class of 2025-2026 Folsom Leadership, would you stand? Really appreciate the support. To go through some details, Laura is going to go through that for us.
Thanks, Eric. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Happy to be here, and thank you to our classmates for also being here and the support of this project. So for the past month or so, month or 2 months, we've been trying to organize our governance structure for this project. So Eric and I are the co-chairs. We've divided into several committees to divide up the work and the aspects of what's needed to execute on a project like this. As Eric mentioned, this is the initial sign design concept for the zoo sanctuary. The design committee that's chaired by Andrew Eagers met with Rebecca and Jocelyn and Kelly and other city staff to come up with this design in support. So we're pleased to present this. And then ideally, if we can be successful with our fundraising efforts, we'd like to, as Eric mentioned, add a monument sign and a kiosk, an informational kiosk as well. So these are our preliminary designs. We hope to raise enough funds to be able to implement these. We've come up with a preliminary budget. The estimate is from around $10,000 to $26,000 for the sign, the monument, and the landscaping and kiosk, et cetera. We also hope to do an event to unveil the sign, and we would hope that you would all attend for that exciting event probably later this summer. We are working with Friends of the Folsom Zoo for our resource stewardship to collect all of our donations and help us organize our finances. And we have brainstormed some fundraising ideas. We'll be looking at utilizing our networks for donations and sponsors. We would like to host a pancake breakfast and do some art activities, either through schools or some kind of animal art auction. Those ideas have been vetted with the zoo leadership and friends of the Folsom Zoo. So we are confident that we can be successful. It's not a comprehensive list. We might change what we end up doing for fundraising, but that's what we've done so far. So just to review our timeline, we just started convening our class in October, early October, so we're not very far into our work. We spent the last couple months deciding on our project and then organizing our structure, our governance structure to execute on that project. We're going to pivot here pretty sharply in the next month and work on fundraising. We want to really dedicate some strong efforts to fundraising over the next couple months so then we can manufacture the sign, get it built and installed, hopefully in the spring. And we'll continue our fundraising. Our leadership class will graduate in June, and we hope to be able to unveil and have everything installed and ready to go for the community and launch an event to celebrate that in the summer or the fall. So we would invite all of you to participate in that as well. And I think that's it for our presentation. We'll take any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight and providing the update. Any questions? All right.
Sounds like a great project.
Thank you. We're excited.
Thank you.
And if you'll please call item number 2.
Okay, your next item is item number 2. This is a presentation regarding the final report for the Folsom Water Vision.
If you could start the 3-minute timer.
You got it.
All right, thank you. You'll have to hit that probably about 10 times through this, but thank you for the intro, Krista. Mayor Rathel, members of the council, Marcus Yasutaki, Utilities Director. I think that's the first time I've said that now out loud at a council meeting. So tonight, the presentation, I really want to give a high level. We have a final report. I've provided a executive summary. If you would like to look through it, the final report and everything is available online. If you want to read through all the details, hopefully I'll encapsulate the 100+ pages, the 6 meetings, the 16 months of work in a nice, succinct effort tonight. So what is the Water Vision? What were we planning to do? And really, we were trying to shape the city's water future for the next 50+ years. So we were looking at what are current trends, what are current regulations, state law, et cetera, and then what do we do moving forward, knowing that there are various reports either by the Bureau of Reclamation or the state of California in terms of how the changing climate will impact water supplies throughout the state. But we also had a specific report that was local to the American River Basin that we conducted with regional partners and the Bureau of Reclamation. So it helped shape kind of what we were planning for within the next 50 years. One important aspect of this was our stakeholder engagement. And when we first brought this to council, we really wanted to let the prior council know that, hey, this was an important part of the project, and we really wanted to invite a stakeholder group that had a background in regional water supplies, a background maybe in environmental needs, a background in maybe water quality or what the needs were as we planned for this, and ensure that we got a broad list of stakeholders. Here is a list. I didn't identify them all by name, but you can see kind of the broad range of groups that we had represented, plus the regional partners within the Sacramento area that we work with in various authorities on a weekly, monthly basis, so that we had feedback from those groups as well, because they have a good understanding of what our regional partners are doing and how what we are talking about doing here in Folsom would overlap or coexist with those partners. And we did have 6 stakeholder meetings that were all open to the public. We recorded everyone. We put each one on the website as well. And then we developed through our communications team a project-specific website. So it was very easy to find, where you can go find all the information on the meetings, the presentations, the videos, and the agendas of all the topics of everything we covered during those meetings. And like I mentioned, this was a very important part for me as part of this process, because it wasn't just staff's report and presentation. It was ultimately, in my opinion, a stakeholder-led effort with our staff and our engineering team, WSC, Water Systems Consulting, providing the technical part of the project. So as I mentioned, we did hold 6 public workshops, started in February of 24, and we finished the last one in April of 25, and then finalized the report for draft consumption in the August timeframe. But these are the topics of the 6 different workshops. I won't read them out loud, but I will go into a little bit more detail about what we did during each one. So as I mentioned, we did take kind of a step-by-step process, basically starting at what are our objectives, what's the feedback that we're getting from the community through surveys that we did, but also feedback from the stakeholders in terms of what is important for us to look at when we're identifying our water supply vulnerabilities, the constraints, but also potential projects that we can do to mitigate some of those constraints. Assessing those vulnerabilities, looking at existing water supplies, taking these projects and kind of putting them together by theme, and then taking those themes and evaluating those further on, okay, what would work within that theme based on the feedback from the stakeholders and the surveys and anybody that happened to be there from the public, and then develop kind of our defined portfolios. And then the last item we did, obviously, was putting all this together in an executive summary and a final report, and developing kind of an implementation or a roadmap of how we might get to these different targets. So the first part of the process was, again, identifying the goals, values, and objectives. And you can see on the left the 6 items that really stood out in terms of the feedback we got from the public, the survey, and the stakeholder group was a reliable water supply, a resilient water supply, obviously maintaining the high level of quality water the city has, not ensuring that it's affordable, but trying to make it obviously as affordable as possible. The community wanted to trust the water supply, that, okay, what we are doing and what we're planning to do is something that they have trust that the city would be able to ensure. And then efficient water use. And we know that's coming down from the state, so that's kind of built into a lot of what just happens now because of state law. Desired outcomes, obviously building consensus within the group was very critical. Developing a roadmap as to how we get to some of these different implementation strategies. It wasn't just, okay, here's a report, here's things you can do, and it's left at that. It's really, okay, then how do you take what we're doing and move it forward? And then the process goals, evaluating the current and future water supplies. How do we manage our supply portfolio to minimize, obviously, impacts to our ratepayers? And then the process was, to be transparent as we went through this, which I believe we fully met that part of this. Item 2 was assessing the risks and vulnerabilities. So what are these, throughout the city? So one, we have one single raw water pipeline from Folsom Reservoir to the city's water treatment plant. 2, if you looked at the water treatment plant and each individual process, not every single process is fully redundant. So looking at building in fully redundant processes within the water treatment plant. Single source of supply. So the city receives its water, all of its water, from Folsom Reservoir. Low lake levels can be a potential challenge in the future. So when that happens, the Bureau of Reclamation has a plan in place to set out floating pumps to deliver water to the city. And then once water supplies get below a certain level, about 280 feet, that is effectively when those supplies become unreliable for delivery to any of the agencies that take water from Folsom Reservoir. So those are the different vulnerabilities / risks that we were looking at through our lens and trying to develop these portfolios to hit on as many of those as we could. This is just kind of what I talked about earlier, just in the table format, but it just gives a little bit more maybe numbers to it. So we took all those different projects and the vulnerabilities and looked at past studies that the city's been involved with to develop our options. We created and took from those different reports the projects associated that would potentially mitigate the different vulnerabilities and risks, identified which projects are what we felt as a team were feasible, and then put the projects together in these different portfolios to deliver to the stakeholder group and then get feedback from the group. So with that, we developed these draft supply portfolios, which looked at surface water projects and then groundwater projects. And I'll talk about it a little more towards the end, but when we developed all these and presented these to the stakeholder groups, a lot of the feedback we got was, hey, it'd be good to have a portfolio that combines both of these alternatives, right? To look at groundwater alternatives in conjunction with surface water alternatives and develop what we call the hybrid portfolio. So we ultimately landed with the plan that identifies options under both of these different alternatives from either groundwater or surface water. So you can see we've got improved infrastructure, we've got groundwater only option, we've got an enhanced groundwater option, which kind of expands where we would look in terms of partnering with agencies that have access to surface water and groundwater, and then an enhanced surface water option. So could we do, besides redundancy of a pipeline, is there a potential to do a redundant intake, so a second intake somewhere? And that's part of that option. And with all the feedback and with the surveys, we asked our stakeholders, okay, in an order of importance from a 1 to 5, what is important to you? Is reliability important? Is it resiliency? So you couldn't put 1 for all of them. You had to do 1 to 5. And then that identified for us, how we weighted each of the portfolios on a scoring basis. And one of the appendixes in the report goes into a lot more detail on how you do the math. But effectively, when we took that feedback, here is kind of where each one landed. So you can see in the first 4, reliability was important and resiliency was important. And we saw that in the feedback we got was having a resilient and a reliable water supply. Now, this doesn't say that cost isn't important, but it didn't. I thought going into this that would be a higher factor in terms of the people that we surveyed, but it was not. The reliability and the resiliency of delivering water to our customers, at least in the surveys and within the stakeholder group, were the 2 highest ranking objectives for this. Stakeholder input. So as I mentioned, there was an interest in developing a hybrid portfolio that combines both groundwater and surface water. So, how adaptable are either or both together? How do we enhance the existing portfolio that the city has? How do we use our regional partnerships to provide or develop projects that meet kind of this hybrid scenario or provide options for groundwater and surface water? And the last one, which was really important, was adding a groundwater component to that. Since currently the city relies 100% on surface water from Folsom Reservoir, it was how do you tap into the groundwater resources within the region or further develop partnerships with the neighboring agencies that have access to both groundwater and surface water. So a summary of the recommended portfolio. 1 was ensuring that we add the water supply redundancy. So a parallel pipeline or new intake and pipeline to the treatment plant was high on the list and important. Develop the Folsom South Canal raw water intake. So the city has a contractual right and to be able to take water from the Folsom South Canal. So even if the intake at Folsom Reservoir was out for whatever reason, reclamation can still deliver water through their lower inlets or lower outlets, to the American River and ultimately down to the Folsom South Canal, and we could pick up there. You'd have to build the infrastructure and move it back to the treatment plant in order to do so. But given that we have a contractual right to do so, it does, get us a little bit ahead of the game because we wouldn't have to go seek a new point of diversion from reclamation to be able to do so. Improved treated water redundancy. So looking at each of the processes, we've done this over the years in terms of, capacity of, like, say, the filters or the pretreatment or the polymer and the chemical feed systems, but the individual pipelines between each process is something that was of importance to the group. Developing diversifying the water supply. So how do we get to the groundwater supplies within the region? That was important. And then enhancing the reliability from Folsom Lake. So implementation plan background. So some of the key elements and programs that we developed for each one of those areas. So how do we add raw water supply redundancy? we look specifically at raw water redundancy type programs. And you can see the table below under diversifying the water supply. So we have, diversifying the potable supply, but there's also a component of the non-potable supply. And I'll get into it a little more in a couple of slides, but this is really tapping into the treated groundwater from Aerojet and how do we put that into purple pipe that's been installed south of Highway 50, and then what would be proposed in the Easton and Glenboro areas in and around the Aerojet property for development there. So looking at the risks and the system vulnerabilities from an infrastructure standpoint, we've got the single point of failure and then the treatment plant lacking full redundancy. Then we have the supply side, which is a single source of supply, low lake levels, and then very low lake levels on the far right. And you can see kind of what the level of risk is that we identified as a group. The vulnerability of single point is a high risk. So that is something, and I'll get to that in my last slide, but that is something that, we have a lot of attention towards. So from that, we developed the scoring of each of the vulnerabilities based on the estimated probability. I won't read all the details here. It's also in the report, but effectively, how are we ranking it in the far right, which is the score? And the higher the number is, I don't say it's a better score, it's a score that we want to avoid. And so those ones with the higher number are the ones that have a higher risk or a vulnerability of occurring and what the impact is on the city. So you can imagine if the raw water pipeline failed between the reservoir and the treatment plant, that's the supply for the city. So it's 100% impact, right? So that's why it ranks, I guess, in the red, and then you can see the one in the orange, and then those that follow in the yellow. So what did we do to develop the portfolio to address these vulnerabilities? So we have program 1, which is the raw water redundancy, program 2, which is treated water redundancy, program 3, which is diversifying the potable supply and developing a non-potable supply, and then for 4 and 5, it's a combination of the first program plus these regional partnerships and programs that we can take advantage of. So from there, as I mentioned, we didn't want this to just be a report that sat on the shelf. We wanted to identify, okay, what do we need to do next and when do we need to do this? So we looked at the water that we would need, so looking at our maximum day demands, and then looking at the water that's ultimately available. And if there's a gap, how do we fill that gap? So you can look at that in a 5-year time frame, or you look at it 50 years out, and that's kind of how we developed and looked at these projects of what could not only meet a near term, but what would also help meet a long term. And there are some projects that can do both right away, and then there are others that you build upon, and that's part of the implementation plan, is you build upon some of these projects, and you have one project and a second, and then ultimately you can get to where you need to be in 50 years in just smaller increments. So from phasing and trigger points, you'll see this kind of on one of the larger printouts of the last page of the handout you have is looking at the current phase, and that's just everything we're doing to date. Phase 2 is, okay, how do we reach, or when we reach 35 million gallons per day as a maximum build out, what does that then do for any of the potential vulnerabilities, and what do we need to do to mitigate, and so on down the list from 3, 4, and 5. And number 5 is when we meet potentially a max of 50 MGD in the driest year event with this model that shows these hot dry projections, which basically is the least amount of snowpack that you would have in a given year and the hottest year. And so the probability of that was low, plus we're not projected to ever reach 50 million gallons per day. That's just the capacity of our plant. And so we've addressed each one of those in the implementation plan. And this goes, you could see the different phases that are listed there. I really won't read all these because they're provided in the report, plus they're provided in in the executive summary, but it's really looking at each program. We have our base program, then program 1, 2, 3, and 4, and each one, addresses different needs within the city potentially, depending on what we would need to achieve and what we're trying to do. You could see kind of the timing of where we broke these down in terms of, okay, things we do now through 2035, things we do through 2030, 2050, and et cetera, based on the city growing and continuing to evaluate the demands, maybe as every 5-year basis on the growth of the city, as well as how state requirements and state law impact the use of water on a customer by customer basis. And then you've got 2050 to 2070. I don't think I'll be here to get into those, but hopefully this will lay a great foundation for whoever might be working on it at that time. So just a quick overview of, some of the different projects, but, looking at the existing raw water pipeline and the existing intake, how could we potentially use the Folsom South Canal and bring water back to the treatment plant? So this, from a planning perspective, can be anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million to develop the plans and everything, and then go into construction, which is a larger ticketed item. That's probably a $25 to $30 million project to do so. But it's really, from a foundational perspective, identify the new intake location or develop the analysis for that, develop any emergency response plans for things that could happen at the treatment plant, develop your plan for the non-potable water system and what you might be able to do there and what then that does to reduce your potable water needs. And then the two others are really the partnerships with our local agencies that have access to both groundwater and surface water. And that one, in my opinion, is very important because they do have that groundwater component that the city just does not have. And that plays an important role when looking at diversifying your supply. Phase 2 is, if we get to a point where we feel designing a new intake and raw water pipeline is reasonable, then we would come back to city council and say, hey, look, this is an option. This is how much it might cost. And then we'd figure out, okay, at that time, are there any potential rate impacts? Is this something you issue bonds for, et cetera? We'd have to figure all that out and then determine whether or not that's something we would proceed with. Identifying, again, the supply options with our partners around the region, design and constructing the non-potable system for the plant, the area south of Highway 50, not only the Folsom plant area, but the area in and around Aerojet, so the Glenboro and Easton projects, if you're familiar with those. And again, continuing regional partnerships to look at those relationships and projects. Phase 3, so in the 2050 to 2070 timeframe, is looking at, areas even further outside of kind of the Folsom South Canal region and looking south or in the South County for partnerships for bringing in either treated groundwater or groundwater to a new water treatment plant, maybe somewhere in the plant area, or do we try to bring that water all the way up to the treatment plant here north of, just down the street? And again, continuing to collaborate with our regional partners as to how we might be able to move water around. And then, phases 4 and 5, it really further out there and undeterminedness, at this point in terms of what costs might be. But that then expands our partnerships maybe north of the American River and south of the American River in terms of access to groundwater and getting that within or into, the city's system. So that's kind of a high level of everything that's in the report. Some of the next steps is, looking at the non-potable feasibility study. We have finished kind of a non-potable water master plan that identifies what the ultimate needs are in terms of demands. And so now the next steps would be to work with Aerojet Rocketdyne to identify, okay, what are your current get capacities and treatment capacities that the city has access to, which is closer to Prairie City Road and White Rock Road, kind of in that corner of their property. We do have an agreement with Aerojet that it was with Aerojet, now Aerojet Rocketdyne, that allows the city to take use of the water that's treated there. So how do we take it and then now physically put it into a purple pipe system? Finalizing the raw water alternative intake analysis. So we are currently under contract with Stantec, and they're evaluating an option to have an intake in the American River downstream of Folsom Reservoir, about where the prison property and the zoo property kind of meet and adjoin, right by, or was it Robbins Ravine, the walking bridge there, right in that area where we would potentially put in a new intake and pump water up and then to our treatment plant, so we wouldn't be reliant on the pipeline coming from the dam. So we have that in process. That should be wrapped up probably in the late spring, early summer, and we'll know what some of the constraints are, what some of our permitting requirements would be, and then an opinion of cost on that. Developing the Golden State Water Company, Sac County Water Agency, and Folsom South County groundwater. So we are at least verbally committed with each of those once, and this will be a future item in a month on the water form agreement. But when that is signed and adopted, we are all working to develop options as to how we might use water within Sac County, the south of Sac County's area, so south of the American River, sorry for fumbling the words, but south of the American River, and bringing that into the city. And then we have partners through San Juan Water District, Fair Oaks Water District, Citrus Heights Water District that are north of the American River, and can we develop that partnership to either exchange water or bring treated groundwater into the city from north of the American River. That hasn't happened yet. I have been in initial contacts with Citrus Heights Water District. Fair Oaks Water District will, I think, shortly go under a new change with their general manager. I believe he is getting ready to retire, so we are waiting till a new general manager comes in place, so we're not having to do our discussions twice with that. And then this is fairly new, but the last bullet is the raw water parallel pipeline discussion. I believe we'll have a meeting with CDCR here in a couple of weeks with Chief Green and Brian, the city manager, and I was invited because I do have some questions about how we would partner for a parallel pipeline through prison property from the, we wouldn't necessarily go all the way up to Folsom Dam and Reservoir, but right outside of their gates on Lake Natoma Crossing. The pipeline actually goes through prison property now, the raw water pipeline to our treatment plant. So we want to initiate discussions as to how we might partner with them to install a parallel pipeline through their property as well. So with that, I will take any questions, but I guess I really want to thank our stakeholder group, because it was 6 meetings. They were an hour and a half, most of them 2 hours long on a Tuesday evening, plus any homework that we had in between meetings. The public that came out that wasn't part of the stakeholder group had a lot of positive feedback, a lot of good input, which was nice. You know, our communications team getting the word out, getting the survey out, doing all the things we needed to get that messaged as best as we could. And then our consultant team was very helpful with all this. And we did have a former council member as part of the stakeholder group, and also a current council member as part of the stakeholder group. So if there's anything specific that Councilmember Leary would want to address, I'm sure she could fill you in. But thank you.
Thanks so much, Marcus, and thanks to all the staff and stakeholders. Questions, Councilmember Kozlowski?
Yeah, what is the long-term responsibility of our water department for providing water to the developments on the Aerojet property? You mentioned them briefly.
Yep. So if you look at when the
Easton and Glenboro.
the Easton and Glenboro, so they are physically situated in the city's water supply area or water service area. So that's a different boundary than the city limit boundary. And so because they're in that boundary, we are obligated to serve them as a customer base for water supplies.
Was because you mentioned them when you were talking about having alternate intakes from the American River, with potentially one down closer to Hazel than where you just described up by the prison. Was that always part of the discussion with those developments, or was the supposition that they were going to get served from our existing plant and water supply?
They were always part of our existing treatment plant supply. And so when we look at the overall capacity of the plant, the demands to serve those areas are included in kind of our maximum day demands, average day demands. We include those in our calculations.
Gotcha. And then what is being done with the treated water from the Aerojet property right now from their processing?
So currently, they just spray it overland, put it overland, or they put it in ponds, and then from the ponds, they'll put it in. They have a non-potable fire system on site, and so they can use that water for their non-potable fire suppression system. They used to use it for cooling purposes when they were high in production for their testing facilities. That obviously is no longer there, so the demand on that is a lot lower than it used to be. But they typically have it just overland, and it just percolates and naturally recharges what was treated.
Gets treated again eventually.
It's just what they're putting back on meets the requirements of their
But
permit.
they're not currently exporting any of that water.
Not from the GET AB facility, which is where our agreement is. They have other, GET is short for groundwater extraction and treatment. So they have other facilities. There's a I, a J, a K, et cetera. And they do have arrangements with other purveyors in the region where they will discharge that into the American River.
Okay.
And then somebody will pick it up as part of their portfolio and treat it. But it's all blended by the time it gets there. It's not directly piped.
Okay. If that's usable as landscaping water through Purple Pipe, that seems like the easiest of all the stuff that you just described.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And that's what we want to do next. Now that we know what the demands are in the plant area and in the Easton Glenboro area, can we meet the peak demands with the existing infrastructure that Aerojet has on property? We don't believe they can, because they're not built to meet like a peak irrigation demand. But that would be the next step, is determining just what that would need to be in terms of an infrastructure, and then how do we modify their discharge permit to include non-potable irrigation.
Gotcha. Thank you for all this work, and thanks for the reminder of why I loved being on the Utility Commission way back when.
Councilmember Rohrbach, any questions? Councilmember Leary?
Thank you, Marcus. It was actually a lot of fun exercises there, but a lot of work. And I was really impressed with the number of people from the community that just showed up to learn what was going on and asked a lot of questions, and had a lot of experts there that helped us come to all the final conclusions that you've put together. One thing I think that we discussed, and probably not in great deal, was the cost for all of these necessary improvements to provide a redundant system for water transport out of the American River, using the Purple Pipe, perhaps for the Aerojet water, and for improving a system for treating all of the water. And that would be something, if you have to come back and ask for repairs and or the addition of a redundant system, that you would bring back. So I don't even know if you can come up with any ballpark figures to share with the council, and what the sources of that money might be.
So I think, well, first of all, thank you, Councilmember Leary, for serving on the stakeholder group. In terms of cost, the planning and some of the initial feasibility, you're probably in the $1 to $2 million, maybe $2.5 million range to go through that. In terms of maybe implementing these projects, there's probably a range of $50 million on the low end to kind of $175, $200 million on the high end, when you're looking at a project. If you were to, let's say, install wells in an area south of the American River within Sacramento County, install the infrastructure, and then pump that all the way back into our system and distribute. So those are probably the bookends in terms of project costs. Now, I haven't calculated what that might mean on a per ratepayer basis, but in terms of project cost, you're probably 50 million on one end, 175. By the time you get there, probably 200, 225 million, if you're 40 years out.
And what were the priorities for improvements?
The priorities, I think there was two that, in my opinion, really stood out. One was getting the redundancy built in to the pipeline from the reservoir to the treatment plant, and then the redundancy within the treatment plant itself. The second, as Councilmember Kozlowski pointed out, kind of the low-hanging one was the non-potable supply. Although that doesn't reduce all your demands, it could take off, 4 to 6% ultimately build out. So those were kind of the two big ones. And then the third, and it wasn't in any particular order, but it was the diversification of the water supplies. So those potential agreements and projects with our neighboring agencies that do have access to surface water and groundwater. And it was probably more focused on the south of the American River than north of the American River, because those contractual relationships would be with each of those agencies. If we did go north of the American River with Fair Oaks or Citrus Heights, we'd have to also then bring in San Juan Water District. They wouldn't necessarily have a project to offer, but ultimately the contracts that Fair Oaks and Citrus Heights have are with San Juan Water District. So it just adds another layer, another wrinkle. But I'd say those are probably kind of the order of the feedback.
So resources for costs, other than adding that to the ratepayers' monthly bills, would be grant funding, state, federal?
Yep, both,
funds?
all the above. One of the things that I do know that's offered under Reclamation's Water Smart, I believe it's their Water Smart program. They do have what's called Title 16, and it's for kind of reuse, recycling, non-potable water options. So that would be a potential place to look. The Army Corps has a Section 219 that the region has used, and two agencies are currently using that right now. I think PCWA and the City of Roseville for $5.3 million or so to do a raw water supply project for their communities. And so that's an option that we could look at, probably not fiscal year 27, but maybe 28, and maybe apply those two for the non-potable project, whether it's the planning or the design or construction.
And just one more question. What do you see on the horizon for when we might be asked to, or, want to implement moving down the ladder of these improvements?
I could see either later this year, the first part of next calendar year, the non-potable project with Aerojet being one that would come forward, because like I said, the arrangement's already there in terms of the agreement that we have to use the water. It's really looking at, can we use their existing facilities or not? If we can, how do we plumb it into south of Highway 50 projects? If we cannot, what do we need to do to upgrade those and then plumb into the existing infrastructure? And then, like I mentioned, from a permitting perspective, what do we need to do to modify their permit to allow us to use that in purple pipe? So that's probably the first, and then maybe soon or right after or in conjunction would be a parallel pipeline. And that might even come sooner. I think a lot of it might depend on the discussion we have. I believe it's next month. To see how fast we might be able to move with the state to start looking at the feasibility of a parallel pipeline and what that also means for their supply.
Investigating all of those plumbing questions is important right now, because the improvements to Prairie City Road are coming sooner rather than later at this point. So,
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Aquino.
I just had a question about the prison, actually. So they have their own water rights and their own treatment plant, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if our water treatment plant were to be compromised in some way, could we rely on them for the short term, or they just don't have the capacity?
They don't have the capacity, and we're not connected to their system.
Okay, thank you.
Just one or two for me. Your demand projections, you showed the water supply and water use. We really use less water today than we did before a lot of the growth that we've experienced. And then you said, well, the demand projections might go up, right? But so far, our trend has been declining or flat. So I would just kind of understand, and maybe Councilmember Kozlowski brought some of this up. Is it Easton and Glenboro? I would imagine those would be developed as a very super efficient households also. So where are we seeing this massive increase in supply that's needed?
So I think the two biggest areas are all south of Highway 50. So I believe ultimately, I mean, right now we're probably right around 18,500 to 19,000 acre feet per year. At build out, we're anticipated to be right around 25,000 acre feet per year. So that's ultimately all of south of Highway 50 in the Folsom Plant area, plus all of what's in the Glenboro Easton area. I mean, we have some minor infill projects, north of Highway 50, but it's minimal in terms of water use compared to any areas south of Highway 50 in terms of potential growth and vacant land. I anticipate, though, based on kind of the state requirements and state law and the drive and the continued driving down of water use on a per property basis based on their water use efficiency mandates, our ultimate target set by the state is going to be closer to 23,000 acre feet ultimately at build out. So between now and I think it's 2045, that's a 4,000 acre foot increase over the next 20 years. So it's not that much in terms of the grand scheme of ultimate build out.
Okay.
And just for context, the city's contractual water rights and water repayment contracts with the Central Valley Project is 34,000 acre feet. So that would leave you with roughly, 10 to 11,000 acre feet of contractual water that's not used.
Okay. And then I guess my second question is really, we have a contingency plan, right? With this, we've been relying on the single raw water outlet for the history of the city, right? And so we have a contingency plan in place for that failure, right?
Yeah, so there's a couple things we could do. We can minimize, obviously, the direct impacts by turning to two connections we have, one with Golden State Water Company that's right by Naturewood, one with San Juan Water District that's right by Rainbow Bridge. But that is one of our biggest concerns, is a full-scale failure of that pipeline from the dam basically to the treatment plant. And so that's why that one is the kind of a high priority item, is to get that parallel pipeline in, so we, for the most part, mitigate that as a potential option. And then we do have, with the Bureau of Reclamation, they do have floating pumps that they can set out, and they've done this before, that we can set out. And
yeah, I guess my question, like, I could keep a second car in my driveway, right? Just because my first car might fail at any time. But the idea that I'm going to pay for a second car and keep it operational at any given time, and that it's going to be running when I go out and my first car doesn't start, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? And instead, I'd maybe have some contingency plans. If my car needs to get fixed or replaced, I have, say, a week to do that, right? So I'd have to have some other plan for a week. We have a plan in place, right? If this were to fail, it would take us a week to get it back up and running, a month to get it back up and running. We would truck water in. We would, we have a contingency plan that's there.
so we did have a failure in 2009, and it took about 14 to 16 hours to get a parallel pipeline in place.
Okay.
I don't want to say a good thing about it, but because it is raw water, it's not treated, you don't have to worry about getting the potable drinking water pipe in place to get that raw water from there. So yeah, we have options if that were to happen. We've got contractors that can do the work. It's just, if it's a small section versus a large section, the timing could be different. If it was just one stick of pipe, it could be a lot faster than this was a couple hundred feet back in 2009.
So I guess that's really where my question is like what makes more sense, right? Is this planning for the temporary failure or putting in a whole nother set of things? And we can talk about this later on down the road, but I think that's where my questions really are is the temporary fix versus the fully redundant system.
Yeah, and I completely understand that. And I think one of the things that part of the discussion is how do we balance, being able to then, if we did have a parallel pipeline, I'll just use that as a scenario, we can take the main pipe out of service and do a full inspection and do repairs kind of on a scheduled routine basis. Because at some point we know you have to get back in there and do some type of repair. It could be a small little pinhole leak or something, but we would have to get in there and do some sort of fix to it. A parallel pipe offers you a lot of flexibility to keep. So if you, in your weak scenario, you could keep it off longer if you find other things that require more than the 1 week.
It's fair.
But to things we all have to balance and talk about because it all comes, not that it all comes down to cost, but that's part of what we'd have to balance and discuss.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your presentation this evening.
All right, thank you all.
That takes you to the consent calendar.
All right, items to pull from the consent calendar this evening. We have item 8 to pull. Any other items?
I'll go ahead and move adoption of items 3 through 7 and 9 through 13.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Council members Aquino?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Leary?
Yes.
Rohrbaugh? Yes. And Rathel?
Yes.
Okay, item number 8 is resolution number 11530. This is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with the Permanente Medical Group to provide the fire department with a medical director.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This item, as we've considered our different options, our original proposal was to continue with a 3-year agreement with Dr. Sloan to provide medical director services for the fire department. However, with a lot of the development of medical facilities, we're recommending modifying the recommendation to a 1-year agreement so that we can have discussions with others if that is feasible for the city. And we may end up continuing just where we're at, but we just want to modify the recommendation to extend an agreement as listed in the staff report, but for 1 year.
With that, I'll be happy to move resolution 11530 with the modification to a 1-year contract.
I'd like to have some more discussion on this.
Sure.
I wonder if Chief Solak can come up and kind of explain to us what this officer does, what their responsibilities are, and if he's got any information about the availability of people who are equally as qualified to perform this job in this region.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, staff. Jason Solak, Interim Fire Chief, and I can speak, Councilmember Leary, to a couple of your points. The one that I'll just admit up front that I don't have any history or the ability to speak on is how many folks might be qualified to serve in this role. But the medical director is a critical role for any fire department that provides emergency medicine services. That role includes not only medical oversight for paramedics and EMTs, it also includes development and interpretation of clinical protocols, quality assurance, training, real-time consultation as needed during complex and high-risk events. There's an increasing complexity for that role of medical director. In fact, EMS has been recognized as a subcategory of emergency medicine, and there actually is a board certification that qualifies those folks to be considered an expert in their field. The role of medical director, as it relates to Dr. Sloan, I would say that our experience, it would be understating to say that we've been very pleased with the service. He has made himself available after hours in the evening. He has expanded his role with the department. In terms of assisting us in grant fund writing, he was successful in actually, Councilmember Aquino sent the ground announcement, but he was successful in helping us write a $30,000 grant for cardiac DeLucas devices that we use for CPR. He sits on several advisory groups. He is a liaison for us to the EMS section, and really has just made himself available and responsive to our needs. And again, to speak to who might be qualified, I don't know. We've not engaged in conversation outside of those we've had with Dr. Sloan. When Dr. Sloan was selected to serve as our medical director, there were, as I understand, 3 individuals who submitted applications, and there was an interview process, and he was the individual that was chosen based on his credentials and demeanor.
So how long has he actually been contracted with the city? Is this the end of his first 3-year term, or?
That's correct.
That's been longer?
Yeah, that's correct. We signed a contract with Dr. Sloan as a representative through the Permanente Medical Group in December of 22, I believe. So yeah, his contract actually expires this month. And as we were writing the resolution and the recommendations, again, the feedback that I had received from the entire agency and many of our regional partners is that he was an individual that was really a standout in his field.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just wondering what the impetus would be for this, to make this change at this point, since the fire department seems to be happy with him. He's doing a good job. I think the cost is likely reasonable, given surveys done in other areas. Unless somebody is looking for cost savings or something else, I don't see any need to make this a 1-year contract and do further investigation.
I'll speak to the impetus of this. I met with one of our health agencies that's active in Folsom, and they have community benefit dollars they're required to put back into the community. A number of other agencies around the country, their medical director for the fire agency is paid for with community benefit dollars from the local health agency. And so when I saw this on the agenda and had a meeting with one of our local health agencies, and they said, we might be interested in footing that bill or partnering to foot that bill or providing this service in kind, I reached out to Chief Solak and said, have you thought about this? And so he also said the contract's expiring very soon. And so we kind of had talked about it and said maybe a 1 year gives us the chance to investigate that. Maybe Chief Sloan stays on, but instead it's through a different agreement with the 4 or 5 health agencies we have here in Folsom that are growing rapidly.
And if I'll just elaborate,
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the contract expires, and we're required under Title 22 to have a medical director. From a legal perspective, the DEA controlled substance, we have to have a medical director with a licensed physician that orders and is responsible for the narcotics. Again, not having an opportunity to meet with any other individual from another healthcare. Again, it's very possible that there are some other really qualified individuals. And again, at the direction of council, I'm happy to meet with them and staff and go through that process to thoughtfully evaluate long-term solutions for our medical director needs.
And so I have a question about the length of availability of the community service dollars. Is that something that's indefinite? And was that, if you had that, community service dollars, that's something that they're allocated annually from the source, or is this something that is an ongoing benefit for that particular provider?
It's community benefit funds that they are put back into the community.
From their institution.
They're required to put, since they're a nonprofit health system, they're required to put in community benefit dollars back into the community every year. So all I can tell you is that other agencies are funding the medical director through this very same type of agreement. So I don't know all the details. This was literally I saw it on the agenda last week, kind of started the discussions, and this is where we're at right now. So I don't have all the answers of how it would work, which is why we're saying, hey, let's renew the contract, but just do it for a year so we're not locked in. I agree with you, the price is reasonable, but $40,000 a year is $40,000 a year. If we can have somebody else foot that bill for us, then we can put $40,000 more into other things for our community.
And what is the benefit for that institution to provide the community service dollars? Is there any quid pro quo or, some other kind of agreement in place for that?
I wouldn't think so, but I do think that us, just like us using the Permanente group right now, I think a good part of this is that we have that relationship with our health systems that are there. So I don't think it would be I don't foresee anything different to that other than potentially a funding source. It may even be literally the exact same individual with the exact same group, just a change in funding source.
Sure.
But we don't have the time to chase that down.
Right. So there wasn't an opportunity to discuss with them all of the requirements for the person that fulfills that position. It's not just to be able to use the license to prescribe narcotics for the EMTs.
If that question is directed
Yeah.
to me, no, I've not had any opportunity to speak to any other healthcare providers about our needs and whether they have the ability. But like I said, it could be very possible that Sutter or Dignity or one of the other healthcare providers has someone who is as qualified, maybe more. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I just want to make sure that we're getting the best care possible and the best training for our personnel possible
Sure.
with somebody that has that experience.
Yeah. And I'll just add on that point, I appreciate that, is I would absolutely recommend that medical director be an individual who is trained and skilled in acute medical services, an ER physician, right, that is in alignment with the care that we provide. Being an ER physician is an extraordinary life-saving experience. And I love my personal physician, but I wouldn't necessarily go to my personal physician for an acute cardiac or respiratory ailment, as wonderful as she is.
Right. No, I totally agree. And having worked in a trauma center for 31 years, I'm very sensitive to what we're training our EMTs to do and what kind of support system they have in place. So I think,
and that really ties into their ability to interface with the county LIMSA protocol, CQI training, because they are trained in everything acute medical services on a daily basis. So absolutely.
right. So I think that answers all of my questions. I just was curious about what the incentive for this was going to be and the long-term availability of community benefit dollars, since the healthcare system is generally in trouble for reimbursements these days. So, thank you.
Councilmember Aquino?
So, question for you, Chief Solak. So, currently, we share the expense for Dr. Sloan with other agencies in the region, correct?
That's not correct. That was the model that we had until 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
We were in a joint venture, again, with Permanente Medical Group and I believe it was Dr. Mackey.
Okay.
Was our medical director, and he provided that service to the entire region. And there was, as you can imagine, there was a high demand, especially for some of the larger agencies, in particular Sac City and Sac Metro, who felt like they needed more kind of one-on-one with the medical director, given the size of the agency and the role that individual plays. So the chiefs agreed to kind of dissolve that partnership, and now each agency is independently.
Okay, I didn't understand the timing. So for the past 3 years, we have only had Dr. Sloan.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and to be fair, he does provide those services for El Dorado Hills. He is on the CalJac committee for their paramedic program because, again, they need a medical director for oversight, and also I believe it's Amador County Protection because they have an ambulance service in the county in Amador County.
Is he aware that we're having this discussion tonight about possibly just doing a 1-year term?
He is.
Okay, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't jeopardize his desire to, okay.
After the discussions, we certainly reached out and was very transparent with Dr. Sloan and the group and just said, would there be any detriment to us amending the agreement from a 3-year to a 1-year? And he was he was supportive. In fact, he being involved in the region as he is aware that there is an interest among other healthcare providers to really kind of entrain in communities and stuff. So he was not actually surprised.
Okay. Then I don't think there's any harm in just doing a 1-year agreement for now and exploring options. So I will go ahead and second the motion.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, you had some comments, questions?
Yeah. So it sounds like this is to you or to our fire department, like this is the right guy. You feel good with the training. You feel good with the, I mean, I've never heard anything negative, only positive.
Yeah, I can only speak. I've met Dr. Sloan once and spoke to him briefly. The feedback from those folks, particularly in our fire department and throughout the region, he is a sought-after individual. He was recruited by several of the agencies to be their medical director, and at the time he was a local Folsom resident and felt like he really wanted to participate in his local community. And so, I can't speak to more than those desires on his behalf, but everything that I know about Dr. Sloan, what he provides, I've had many folks say that we've called him at 2:00 in the morning with a bit of a crisis. He has continued to make himself available and responsive. He has, I think within the first week here, we had a bit of an infection control issue, communicable disease, and he was at the ready and was very responsive to our inquiries and best practices as we pushed out information to our members. So to say that he's done a great job, I think is very fair.
Okay. Then my next question would be for, I'm not sure, I think it might be for Brian. The community benefit dollars that the mayor is speaking of, I mean, to sign this contract for 3 years, we just figure out how to pay for it. We could get those dollars from elsewhere, from other funds without having to do a 1-year contract. Would that be correct?
Well, sure. I guess in many ways, we don't know the answers definitively for those. And so what we've tried to demonstrate, to the community going forward is that we will look at any and all options to try to provide the best service at the lowest possible cost. And so this is just one of those things, and I appreciate Chief Solak reaching out to Dr. Sloan to see if that would be okay, because our top priority is to make sure our community is safe. Yeah. And so in his hands, we will be safe, and if we enter into this 12-month agreement, then we will be able to answer the questions, the really good questions that have been brought up from the dais today, to see if it is community benefit dollars, how long, who is it, are there other alternatives, or maybe, in 6 months we come back and say, we don't have any other options, let's extend the agreement with Dr. Sloan for the original time period.
I guess my question is, could we still use community benefit dollars to pay for this contract because they're community benefit dollars?
Yeah, so it depends on the arrangement. I can't speak for the agency or the institution that's provide the community benefit dollars. Maybe they will provide the community benefit dollars in the form of in-kind services.
Okay, got it.
Right,
Yeah,
so I don't know if it'll just be a monetary donation or they'll make their licensed professional that meets all the criteria available to us.
Yeah.
That's just what I don't know.
Okay, thank you. And then my other concern would be these community benefit dollars that you're speaking of. What are we going to be taking it from? Right, is going into Folsom in some way or another, and if we're going to use it for this, what are we going to take it from? What is it not going to go to? I mean, we have a lot of things that we need in the community that we can use this money for, right? So those are all unknowns. My concern is this sounds like the guy right now. We can trust him. We have a lot of things that the fire department is facing. I'm not sure this is where I want your attention or our attention financially and medically and with training to go this next year. I obviously wouldn't take a lot of attention, but yeah, I'm concerned. I'm kind of like, I'd rather have this guy for 3 years. I think we're solving a problem that we don't have. I understand the thought process behind it, and I think that, 3 years would tie this guy in essentially, and give us even more time to kind of figure out how we can make changes going forward. So I'm really kind of, it doesn't matter. I'm really kind of 50-50 on this. I don't want to lose this guy. It's kind of where I feel.
Sure. Could I add to that? So I definitely appreciate, we don't want to lose him for sure. And the community benefit dollar situation is actually a new situation for us. And part of that is the investment of essentially 4 large medical providers coming into town. And we've just started these conversations where they've been meeting, with our Parks and Rec department, like, hey, what can we do to make an impact here in the community? And so part of it is like, we have literally no idea what areas they're interested in and what works for them. And so we just wanted to provide some flexibility so that we can adjust, because this is a new endeavor with UC Davis, Dignity, Sutter, and Kaiser Permanente, making significant investments. They really, in my experience interacting with them, they want to make a difference. They want to help. And so we don't know where that's all going to go. And so we didn't want to lose an opportunity to have that flexibility.
And just to your comment about we're pulling them from somewhere else in Folsom, nothing is saying that these community benefit dollars from that health system are going to Folsom. So the assumption that we're pulling it from something else in Folsom,
That was my understanding, what you said, that there was this community benefit that they have to give back to the community, but the community is a regional community?
Yes.
Not Folsom.
Well, not even their regional community. It could be their national community, right? Like these are very large health systems, right? And so they're a nonprofit authorized by the federal government, right, to operate, but they have this, that's part of their tax structure, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Councilmember Kozlowski, do you have comments?
If I can ask, it's just to add on to some of the Vice Mayor's comments, and that I had meant to, or asked this earlier, but community benefit for them doesn't necessarily mean that it has to go into a medical program or support. It could go into the parks system. It could go, into providing supplies for the police department. It seems to me that community benefit for those don't have a limitation, unless you're aware of some, where those dollars could be used directly.
They do have limitations, absolutely.
And what, do you know what those might be?
They have to fit into what they have defined as community benefit. But no, I think that's what we're really asking is some time to evaluate whether this is a good use of funds or not. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an okay use of funds. I would like to know more about that piece. And I'm very concerned about losing somebody as highly qualified as Dr. Sloan, who's worked well with the department. That is a huge concern for me, because it's hard to find people with that level of experience and availability within the medical system.
Okay, well, so we have a motion and a second. I think just to summarize, it sounds like Dr. Sloan doesn't have concerns with making it a one-year contract. Is that
He does
correct?
not. That is accurate, Mr. Mayor.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Council members Aquino?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Leary?
No.
Rohrbaugh?
No.
And Rathel?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 3-2.
All right, that brings us to new business.
Thank you.
Yeah, your first scheduled discussion item this evening is new business item number 14. This is resolution number 11510, establishing inclusionary housing in lieu fee amounts for for-sale residential development.
Mayor Rathel, members of the council, I'm Desmond Parrington, Planning Manager in the Community Development Department. Oops, sorry, bear with me, I'm just pulling up my presentation. So tonight before you is the resolution dealing with establishing the inclusionary housing in lieu fees for residential development throughout the city. So as you may recall in our prior presentation on the inclusionary housing ordinance update, program H9 of the housing element requires us to do a study of our inclusionary housing ordinance and the fees associated with that. So we hired Economic and Planning Systems to do that study. They looked at the fee levels, the funding gaps, and our overall methodology. They recommended that we transition to a per square foot basis, which again was discussed along with the ordinance. And that ordinance was adopted at today's meeting. So the fees actually must be established by a separate resolution, which is why we're here before you tonight. So just to give you a little bit of a timeline on all of this, we started with the adoption of the housing element back in 2021. And as I mentioned, we hired Economic and Planning Systems. They prepared that study. We did a workshop with our Planning Commission. We also released the public review draft, did stakeholder outreach during that period. And then, of course, the ordinance was adopted tonight, and the ordinance will go into effect in February 12th of this year. So we looked at 4 different residential prototypes and looked at what the cost would be to, build that, what folks could afford based on their income level, what the cost is to actually build that unit, and that determined the affordability gap or the amount that needs to be subsidized. So based on the recommended in lieu fee level, the single family low density and the single family medium density, those are profitable. You can see a positive development funding gap, which means they're obviously making money. Where it becomes a little more problematic is on the on multifamily rental apartments. You can see they have a $40,000 gap. This is primarily looked at the plan area where we've got most of our development activity. And then right on the cusp of feasibility is the multifamily attached product. So like attached townhome product, condominium product, so forth, which is about 1,500 square feet. So in terms of our goals with the in lieu fees and with the ordinance was really to reduce the administrative burden, not dramatically increase overall revenue. The recommended fee before you is very similar to the fee that we charge, which is based on 1% of the overall sales price, looking back at historical data. However, fees can be used as a policy tool to encourage or discourage certain types of housing. So we've got some recommendations related to that. We did exempt the rental housing from the in lieu fee. We don't currently charge it now, and we're not recommending that we start charging it because of the fact that those projects in the Folsom plan area where we're seeing much of our development, those projects are not feasible. We are recommending that the fee, like the rest of the city fees, be updated on an annual basis with changes in the construction cost index. That allows the fee to maintain, to stay current, and it also ensures that we don't fall behind in terms of when we provide gap financing, that we have the funds to provide gap financing for the construction of affordable housing. And then we are recommending, as the study does, to continue to evaluate our in lieu fee levels so that they don't affect project feasibility, and they also achieve our policy objectives. So before you tonight, we've got the fees for the single family areas where we're seeing predominantly larger single family homes. That's set. We're recommending $3 per square foot. That is in keeping with kind of what we've historically done. And then in the multifamily areas where we see units greater than 1,500 square feet, it's $3 per square foot as well. However, in the multifamily areas where we're seeing smaller units, we reduce the fee to try to encourage that. So to talk a little bit about kind of why we structured it that way is what we've been seeing down in the Folsom Plan area is on the multifamily low density sites. So those can have a wide variety of different housing types, from townhomes to condominiums to duplexes, halfplexes, to single family homes. what we've typically seen from the development community is large single-family homes going into those locations. And we know that those are feasible because they're 2,000 square feet or larger. What we're saying is, based on the kind of the council feedback, is how are we creating a product that is kind of geared towards your first-time home buyer, or geared toward somebody who's trying to move up, or who's doing the reverse and trying to downsize. We're not seeing a lot of that product. In fact, since 2019 in the plan area, we've had only 43 units that are less than 1,500 square feet. So we would like to see, and we would like to encourage, and since they're right on the cusp of feasibility, lower that fee a little bit so that we're encouraging that type of product in our multifamily low density and our multifamily medium density, rather than trying to fit a product that we typically see in the single family high density sites into those areas. It doesn't provide us with that range of housing types. So that's why we had that reduced fee. So in terms of implementation, so depending on what you decide to do tonight, if the fees are approved tonight, then they would go into effect on February 12th when the ordinance goes into effect. Those in lieu fees are deposited into the housing fund, and then at least 50% of the housing fund must be used for construction of housing affordable to lower income households. And then, like I said, it would be adjusted annually based on changes in the construction cost index. So if it goes up, the fee goes up. If it goes down, the fee goes down. Existing projects that already have an inclusionary housing agreement that's been approved, they have the option of continuing to pay the 1% of the lowest priced home in the subdivision, or they can request to switch to the new fee with the city's approval. So they have the option. Anyone coming in new would be bound by the new fee. So the recommendation before you tonight is to approve the resolution establishing the new in lieu fees for sale residential development. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Councilmember Kozlowski, any questions this evening?
No questions, thank you.
Vice Mayor? Councilmember Leary?
I'm wondering, and I know we've gone over this list before, but can we kind of go over what those inclusionary fees can be used for, aside from building, more for rental spaces? So and I'm sorry, I copied this into my notes, but I'm not finding it right now. So they can be used for people to help with loan assistance and other items for people purchasing homes that fall within that the low income categories.
Yeah, so it can be used for a wide variety of uses, and Stephanie Henry, our housing manager, actually can speak to that.
You've done a really thorough job of presenting this before, but I just can't remember the list.
Yeah, so as you know, we can use those fees to help with the affordability of low-income apartments, to help finance the gap that they have in developing those. We can also utilize it to purchase land that we could designate for low-income housing. We could use it to help with projects like Habitat for Humanity, where we helped with them reducing their land costs, and also provided that money back to the general fund so that we can help develop that project. So those are the primary ways we would utilize those funds. We also utilize those funds for staff, for our consultants that review those housing agreements, and for other, housing related projects for lower income folks. But I mean, the goal of these funds is to utilize them to get affordable housing constructed and available to our citizens.
My main interest is, and I guess that, is where the Habitat for Humanity type projects come in, is that people can actually purchase a home with the assistance of this program through programs like Habitat for Humanity.
If we can find partners like habitat
I mean, I think
or
that's
the
a critical
available
piece,
land.
area that we need to fill in. Thank you.
We agree.
Councilmember Aquino?
So Desmond, if one of our goals, and I think it is to see more of that missing middle for sale housing, right? Like you talked about, condos, townhomes, but for sale, not for rent. I understand the reducing the in lieu fee from $3 to $250, but where did that 1,500 square feet come in? Is that just arbitrary? I mean, why would we put a limit on it at all?
So it was based on the prototypes that were presented. So we had a 2,600 square foot single family home prototype, a 2,000 square foot prototype that was, again, a single family home. And then we had a 1,500 square foot townhome project that was attached, and then a 1,000 square foot rental apartment project. And we looked at the 1,500 square foot, and that was the one that was kind of right on the cusp. And I think there's not, a magic science to that. It could be 1,400, it could be 1,600, it could be higher or lower. I think generally speaking, the smaller the home, generally the more affordable it is. And so we used that 1,500 square feet from the study, and and then we looked at some other jurisdictions. We looked at some examples in Rancho Cordova, where, again, I'm not trying to necessarily replicate what was done there, but there were some, what I would consider kind of starter homes. And just, that was around, they ranged in size from about 1,300 to about 1,650 in terms of square footage. And we felt like that 1,500 kind of hit the mark. Yeah. But it could be adjusted, certainly be adjusted up or down depending on the council's desire.
Do you have to limit the square footage at all? I mean, couldn't you just say multifamily, low density or whatever for sale? Does it have to have a square footage limitation on it?
Not necessarily, but what we're seeing in the Folsom Plan area is that really some of these products that we've generally liked, because they are larger. I mean, the Sendero project is a good example. TriPoint's done the Sendero project. There's 3 units associated with that. Those units are all above 1,500 square feet, and yet they're selling in a range from about $525 to $625. So our thought was, well, if you set the square footage a little bit lower than that, maybe the price point will come in a little bit lower, because again, you're dealing with less square footage.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So I think I've dug into some of the data. I appreciate Desmond's, going back and forth with me over the last few days. You can count the number of missing middle projects on 2 hands in the city of Folsom. So I kind of looked at the square footage of different projects that are around. The 1,500 square foot projects, nothing in Sendero would qualify. The Park Shore project, the Farmhouse project would not qualify. The projects that do qualify would be the Toll Brothers duplexes that are coming forward. The kind of blue circle up just north of Rayleigh's, and some of those projects, that one project to the east of Rayleigh's, New Rayleigh's, that's just to the east of there. Some of those, the internal units are below 1,500 square feet. The external units are 1,600 plus. Just kind of give you a flavor. The little projects in Broadstone that are right there at Oak Avenue, I'm not sure if that's technically Broadstone, but I think of it as Broadstone. Those are under 1,500 square foot. So it's like when you have some of the I-Court projects, you do get down into that low 1,500 square foot. Personally, when I look at it, I like the Sendero project. I think that is hitting, it's probably the upper of the moderately priced range to where you could afford that and still call it moderate. You're probably closer to the 120% than you are the 80%. But to me, this is Folsom affordable, Folsom attainable. And so to me, I think we should do everything we can to put our money where our mouth is, and say, these are the type of projects we want to encourage. But I think that's a great discussion that we should have. I personally like 1,900 square feet to look at that break point, and I would rather see. The other question I think we need to talk about as a council is how much do we want to incentivize this? Right now, we're going to offer a $750 discount on what's going to hit the market for $525,000. I don't think we're going to move the needle with a $750 discount. Do we move it with a $4,500 discount? Maybe, more likely than a $750 discount. But my personal preference is that we stop collecting in lieu fees on this missing middle product. And I asked Desmond to run some numbers on what that would look like and what the impact would be to our Housing Trust Fund, because I do think the Housing Trust Fund has provided a very important source of funds for us to do these projects. The answer is about $250,000 a year. If development were to continue, right now we bring in about $5 million a year into our Housing Trust Fund. And so if we were to limit this at 1,900 square feet, and if we saw similar development patterns that we've seen over the last 6 years, that impact would be about 5% reduction in what we take in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Fair enough. Get there in just a second. So I just have kind of gone back and forth. So I wanted to share what my thoughts were on that and kind of diving into the details of that.
Well, can I ask you a question on that? Yeah. Are you done with your? Yeah. So you said stop collecting on the missing middle. So are you saying all of the ones that we're charging $2.50 for? Correct. Or are you so what does that include? Or what would, maybe I ask you or him?
So the staff's recommendation is at 1,500 square foot or less.
Right, so that includes multifamily, duplexes, condos. It includes everything under $1,500 for sale, not for apartments, right?
Yeah, generally we're recommending if you're going to zero out the fees to encourage this type of product, our recommendation would be somewhere around 1,500. Could be 1,600, 1,400. Somewhere around there, because that's it's that smaller product that we're trying to encourage, because that fits into the starter home category, and that's the one that's barely feasible. When you start getting into the 2000, when you get to 2000, that's the analysis by EPS shows that they're making that's very feasible. And so our thinking was, well, 1,900 is getting pretty close to 2,000. That's a feasible product already. If we go down to that around that 1,500 square foot, that's what they're saying barely breaks even. So that's why kind of we're leaning towards that 1,500 square feet.
So, Mayor, I think you articulated this, or Desmond, I'm not sure which one of you articulated this, but about $5 million goes in the Housing Trust Fund, and this would affect what goes in the housing. If we took away the fees altogether for under 1,500, it's going to affect the Housing Trust Fund, not general fund, not things like that. For the general consensus of people watching. And then it just incentivizes, hopefully, the developers to build closer to the 1,500.
And even if it's not enough to incentivize that particular product, it does send the message from the city that our policy is to try to encourage this missing middle, these smaller units.
What I do like about it, Justin, is that while I can't see it moving the needle too much, what the developers will see is that we're trying to make concessions to actually show our priorities by our policies. And so I do like that concept. No, that's it. That's all I'll say for now.
Do we have any public comment this evening?
No, you do not.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Or a couple. If I do the math on this, and we're looking at somebody building, let's say 100 1,500 square foot units, and when you're looking at these complexes, they can be anywhere from 50 units to 100, 150 units. But if you take 100 units and we're reducing the fees, it's only saving the developer on that site $375,000 for 100 1,500 square foot units, which doesn't seem like a huge incentive to me.
Can you go back to your slide where you had the analysis on the gap? Sure. I think that really tells the story right here. What we're talking about is this delta where the gap to making these things more feasible is $9,000 in that third category right there. So relieving them of $3,000 or $4,000 is meaningful progress towards that, and then it doesn't necessarily harm the city's trust fund for these kinds of developments. It gives a more direct subsidy to specifically encourage the thing that we're after. So.
Yeah, and my other point has been, I brought this up in the past, is that there are other disincentives, including the longstanding state law that people that build these types of attached units, I'm not talking about detached units, are having to warranty those for 10 years. And that's a huge cost. And whenever I've spoken to the developers about what's your greatest disincentive for building, condo type, townhome type units, they all have 100% of the time referred to that state law. So I understand, the point that this may be some kind of incentive. I don't think it's huge. And I don't know how much that's going to move the needle until those state laws get changed. And I understand there's a law going through the process at the state level at this point, and I don't know what the chances of that are passing and fixing the problem, but I'm not seeing that, I hate to lose some money out of the housing fund if we relieve them of collecting that, but.
If I may,
yeah.
If there is no incentive after we take this step for developers to build that kind of product, they'll build something bigger, and we will have all the money that we can collect.
And then we won't have fulfilled that need.
Well, we'll be in the same situation we're in currently, where we need to use our trust fund to more aggressively incentivize specific projects rather than generally opening the door to these types of projects.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll be harmed either way. We'll either be successful and we'll get the product that we want, or we'll be unsuccessful, have the money, and still have to chase after the product that we want.
And maybe the greatest success is building more projects like the Habitat for Humanity and using money out of the trust fund to purchase the land.
So I'm going to clarify the discussion and make a motion this evening. I'm going to move resolution number 11510, and I'm going to split the difference between the staff. What's that? I was going to split the difference. Were you about to do the same one? Well, I said 1,900. I'm going to go a little lower. I said 1,900. Staff likes 1,500. I'm going to go 1,700. A modification of 1,700 and a reduction in the fee amount to $0 for under 1,700 square feet.
I'll second.
So you're gonna
Open for
change
discussion.
two
I'm
things.
going to reject that when it comes time to vote on it, simply because I don't think there's any basis for making that kind of change. I think the staff recommendation is a solid one, and it will either work or not work, and we can come back and tinker with this later rather than preemptively assuming that it won't work and it needs to be tinkered with now.
So you're opposed to the change in square footage or the change in dollar value?
I don't see a need for either.
Oh,
I'll jump on
I'm
that.
going to let my motion stand then. Go ahead.
I'm okay with reducing the fee. I think that would be, again, what I said earlier, policy with putting our policy with priorities. But I think the sweet spot is 1,500 square feet for me. 1,900 is a pretty big house. So I don't want to put all the fee burden, or I guess now it's 1,750 is what you're suggesting. But I don't want to. No, that's where I feel right now.
So you'd rather encourage smaller for sale?
I'd rather, if we're
metal.
going to make a change on this agenda, this proposed item, that we start putting this, starting with the 1,500 and under.
Sounds good. Where are you on the size, Councilmember Leary?
I'll agree with the 1,500.
All right. Do you want to make a substitute motion for 1,500? Or I can amend my motion to 1,500 square feet.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Can you call the roll?
Councilmembers Aquino?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Leary,
Yes.
Rohrbach,
Yes.
and Raythel.
Yes.
Okay, good.
All right, that brings us to old business. We call item number 15.
Yeah, item number 15 is Castle Park Play Structure Replacement Project. You have two resolutions that are part of this item. Resolution number 11537, authorizing city manager to execute a construction agreement with Granite Construction. And resolution number 11538, authorizing the city manager to execute a construction agreement with KYA for site work for Castle Park.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Hannah Perez. I am Park Planner 2 with the Parks and Rec Department and the project manager for the Castle Park Play Structure Replacement Project. I am here to present to you tonight on two contracts for the Castle Park project for site work. But before we get into the site work, I am very excited to announce that the community build dates have been scheduled, and they are going to be April 7th through the 12th. Signups are now open. And we actually launched the signups yesterday, and we already have 77 volunteers signed up for a total of 149 shifts. So we have plenty more, so don't be discouraged if you wanted to get involved. We have plenty of more shifts available for the 6-day build. No construction experience is required. We need help from all ready hands who are available to join in the magic of bringing this play structure to life. So please, if you're interested, we will have our link to the portal be on our website as well as in our various social and printed media.
Did you purposely pick the school district's spring break?
We actually did. That is due to the fact its proximity to Oak Chan Elementary School and being able to utilize the parking lot for our volunteers. So I will now talk to you about the the site work that we're going to be doing before the community build begins in order for this project to be successful. And we are recommending moving forward with two contractors to complete this work, Kaya and Granite Construction, Inc. And I will be walking through the scope of work that we will be doing for the site work, but I wanted to orient everybody with the site plan first. We have the project or the play structure in the center. We have Pruitt Drive at the bottom. There's the residences at the top of the plan, and then also to the right, and the Class 1 bike trail to the left of the site. So first, we'll be walking through the scope of work for Kaya. They're going to be starting with clearing and grading of the play areas in preparation for the community build, as well as demolition of a portion of the existing sidewalk along Pruitt Drive. This portion of the sidewalk currently is sloping down into the street and is not ADA accessible at this time. So the intent with the demolition is for this site work would be to bring that portion of the sidewalk up to code. Another step after the grading would be to do some subgrade work for the concrete pavement. Staff is requesting appropriation of Measure A funds for this specific portion of work to offset impacts to the general fund. Since this portion of work directly supports park accessibility, safety, and ADA compliance, we believe it's appropriate use of Measure A funds. Next, Kaya would also be stubbing out utilities, specifically the electrical and potable water for a future restroom. Since the exact location of the restroom has not yet been determined, we would be extending utilities just to the center of the site to allow for the flexibility in the final restroom placement. There is an existing sewer stub already present on site that's extending from Stonington Way, and the location of that existing stub is represented with the star that you see there on the plan. After the community build is complete, Kaya would come back in and install the poured-in-place safety surfacing. They would also be installing the engineered wood fiber. And staff is recommending awarding the construction agreement to Kaya through California Multiple Award Schedules, or CMAS, Cooperative Purchasing Program. Kaya is a qualified CMAS construction vendor, and utilizing cooperative purchasing enables public agencies like the city to leverage collective buying power, which results in cost savings, efficiency, and a streamlined procurement process, which we believe is crucial for a timeline like Castle Park. Next, I wanted to walk through the scope of work that would be completed by Granite Construction. And so they have agreed to do all of the concrete work for this site, and they have also agreed to donate half the amount of the concrete pavement and perform the work at cost to the city. Again, staff is recommending appropriation of Measure A funds for this work due to the fact that it directly supports park accessibility, safety, and ADA compliance, which we believe is an appropriate use of Measure A funds and helps to offset the impacts to the general fund. I wanted to extend a very special thank you to Vice Mayor Rohrbar for connecting us with Granite Construction, and thank Granite Construction themselves for this generous contribution and partnership in helping us make this project successful. Now that you know the scope of work that we're talking about with the site work, I wanted to walk through our projected costs. So for the design subtotal, currently, as we are projecting, it's $158,835. Our materials subtotal for the playground materials itself is $379,438, and the construction subtotal is $462,169 for a project total of $1,001,229. And you can see highlighted in green are the two contracts that we are presenting on today. So that's the Kaya and the Granite Construction, and then a 10% or a construction contingency along with that. And then of those costs, this is how we are breaking them down by funding source. So we have a $800,000 budget of the Parks and Recreation Equipment and Capital Fund, and so we are staying below that, coming in at $716,063. And if these resolutions move forward, we would be appropriating $135,201 from Measure A funds, and then of the rest of the total, which is $149,965, that would be coming in from the efforts from Folsom Kids Play for Generations, which is our nonprofit partner, as well as other generous donations. And so with that, I have the two resolutions that are a mouthful that I'm going to present to you today. Is for the Castle Park Play Structure Replacement Project as resolution number 1157, which authorizes the city manager to execute a construction agreement with Granite Construction, Inc. for concrete pavement work for the Castle Park Play Structure Replacement Project for a not to exceed amount of $72,356 and appropriation of Measure A funds in the amount of $79,529, which that includes the 10% contingency. And the second resolution is 11538 for the city manager to execute a construction agreement with Kaya for site work for the Castle Park Replacement Project for a not to exceed amount of $308,309 from the Parks and Recreation Equipment Capital Fund in the amount of $257,755, and appropriation of Measure A funds in the amount of $55,609 for a total budgeted amount of $313,364, which that includes the 10% contingency on the Measure A portion. So thank you. Questions?
Vice Mayor, any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to make a comment. Thank you for including the stub out or the prep work for a future restroom. I know that this was one of the big things that people care about. It's so close to the trail right there. It would benefit the entire community. And so, I really appreciate you being thoughtful of that and finding a way to make it work. As far as the budget goes, also thank you for getting creative, working with the other departments on funding sources to make sure this park, which will serve others, is going to be done under budget, but also complete with ADA compliance in mind, and all that good stuff. So thank you, Hannah, for all your work.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kozlowski, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Leary?
Oh, quick question. So on the 12th, so we're looking about 90 days before this, is the full construction should have been taking place, right? Will it be open and complete on that day, or is there still some other work? Because I'm thinking about you'll need to be planning a grand opening.
Correct. Yeah. So
celebration, right?
there'll still be some work after the 12th. So after the 12th, which is the play structure, the work that will need to be done is still the poured in place safety surfacing. So that needs to be installed after the play structure is built, and then the engineered wood fiber. So all the safety which is also a safety surfacing, so that it gets installed after the play structure will be built, and then any touch up landscaping that needs to be done after. All those volunteers are out there. Some of the sod might be damaged and stuff. So there will be a little bit of work that needs to be done afterwards, but we're still targeting having it open by the end of April of 2026.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
Councilmember Aquino? No. All right, any public comment this evening?
You have no request to speak on this item.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move Resolution 11537.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the first resolution.
Council members Aquino?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Leary?
Yes.
Rohrbaugh?
Yes.
And Rathel?
Yes.
I'll move.
You want to move?
I'll move 11538.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Council members Aquino?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Leary?
Yes.
Rohrbaugh?
Yes.
And Rathel?
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank you, Hannah.
much.
All right, item number 16.
Okay, item 16 is resolution number 11528. This is a resolution amending prior Reso 11525 and appointing members to the 2026 Ad Hoc Charter Review Committee.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Just as a quick reminder, at the last council meeting, the council decided to move forward with the formation of a charter review committee. As we were preparing this item, we recognized that we assigned membership of the committee to include 2 council members and then the mayor and city manager as non-voting members. And so to avoid having Brown Act meetings or violating the Brown Act, we wanted to modify it so that we have the mayor as 1 seat, a council member as another seat, and then 5 members would be appointed by each council district. And so that's the minor modification. So the mayor would no longer be a non-voting member, and the city manager would be the only non-voting member. So just to announce the proposed committee members, we have Tom Acetuna, designated by Mayor Rathel, Bill Romanelli by Vice Mayor Rohrbaugh, Ken Payne by Councilmember Aquino, Justin Hurst by Councilmember Leary, Glenn Fate by Councilmember Kozlowski, and then at the pleasure of the council, who you'd like to select as the council member in that regard. So before we get to that point, just to reiterate what we're looking at today, we're hoping we can form this committee and approve this resolution, and then we have some work to do. We're going to have to get together quickly in order to take advantage of this review. If the committee does decide to recommend some charter amendments, we need to have meetings in February, March, maybe in April, but hopefully by then the committee can then present their findings to the council so that we can give the council the opportunity, if they so choose, to put something on the ballot within the timeframes. So excited about this effort. It's been quite a while since things have been modified. But with that, I'll close my comments. Happy to answer any questions and leave it up to you to figure out who the members are.
Questions for the city manager this evening?
No. So I'd like to put my name in as the second council member, or first council member.
I'll second the nomination.
I did not nominate myself. I put my name in there.
Nominate you.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, you do not.
All right, no public comment. That's out of the way. So it sounds like.
He nominated.
Would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to nominate Anna Rohrbaugh to serve our vice mayor as a member of this ad hoc committee, in addition to the mayor.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the resolution, including Vice Mayor Rohrbaugh. Please call the roll.
Okay, council members Aquino?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Leary?
Yes.
Rohrbaugh?
Yes.
And Raythel?
Yes. All right, that moves us to item number 17.
Yeah, your
Do you
final.
need,
dis-
do you need an actual motion, or is that sufficient?
So I was going to ask for
Yeah, I can-
clarification. Was that for passing resolution 11528 as well?
That's what I took it as.
I'm
but we can
hap-
make it we can clarify.
As a clarification, I meant to suggest that we approve Resolution 11528 and appoint Vice Mayor Rohrbaugh to the ad hoc committee.
Good enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone want to change their vote now? All right.
Oh, I don't think we have to vote again.
Nope.
Okay, item number 17 is the public meeting related to the proposal to modify the Folsom Tourism Business Improvement District.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This item is to continue the process of considering a modification to the Folsom Tourism Business Improvement District. At the November 12th, 2025 meeting, the Folsom City Council approved a resolution of intention to modify the Folsom Tourism Benefit Improvement District assessment. The proposed assessment would change and increase the assessment from 4% to 8%. And then at this meeting, we're holding this public meeting to allow public testimony on the modification of this change. And there's no city council action required tonight. January 27th is the planned public hearing to move this forward. And then if the council were to approve this, this could go into effect on April 1st, 2026 for those modifications. One of the points, as we've kind of contemplated this, the intent of this 4%, as it's been described by the TED Corp organization, would be to look at physical assets and try to make improvements to the physical assets that would help, improve or increase the number of hotel stays here at our hotel operations. And so some of those to kind of ensure that those goals are being met, we've put together some draft kind of conditions of approval that we will present in a more formal way at the public hearing on the 27th of this month. And so the purpose and use of the additional funds, as it's listed here, would be essentially for economic development, inducing programs, projects, and improvements that directly increase overnight visitation, visitor spending, and local economic impact within the city of Folsom. The priority shall be given to physical capital improvements and destination enhancing projects that are demonstrably intended to induce overnight stays at local lodging establishments. Priority projects include, but are not limited to, sports field rehabilitation, upgrades and resurfacing, tournament quality athletic facilities and amenities, infrastructure or facility improvements that support regional or multi-day sporting events, other physical improvements that directly support event attraction, hosting, or expansion and result in increased hotel occupancy. In addition to physical improvements, eligible expenditures may include complementary destination marketing and event recruitment efforts that directly support and promote the priority project described above. 1.4, administrative costs are expressly prohibited from being funded with additional funds, including but not limited to salaries, office rent, legal, accounting, audit, and administrative consulting services, general overhead, or internal operational expenses. Segregation of funds. Should say TED Corp, I apologize, shall maintain separate accounting records that clearly identify revenues and expenditures attributable solely to the additional funds generated by the 4% increase. Such funds shall be tracked independently from the baseline TBID revenue to ensure transparency and compliance with spending limitations. Annual spending plan and project justification prior to the expenditure of additional funds. The Folsom TED Corp shall prepare an annual spending plan that prioritizes physical improvement projects and includes a description of each proposed project or improvement, the project's relationship to increased overnight visitation, estimated costs and implementation timeline, anticipated hotel room nights and visitor spending impacts. For physical improvement projects, the annual spending plan shall identify the facility or location to be improved, the type and scope of rehabilitation or enhancement, the anticipated events, tournaments, or uses enabled by the improvement. The annual spending plan shall be presented at a publicly noticed meeting submitted to the City of Folsom for review and posted on the TED Corp website.
Quick question.
Yes.
Publicly, a public meeting, is that meaning a council meeting?
So that's up for discussion,
Okay.
so it could be a council meeting or it could be a TED Corp meeting, which is a Brown Act meeting as well.
Okay.
Public reporting and transparency. The Folsom TED Corp shall prepare an annual report detailing the use of the funds, total revenues generated, itemized expenditure by project, status of physical improvement projects, measurable outcomes related to overnight stays and hotel occupancy, and the annual report shall be made publicly available and presented at a public meeting. This slide kind of shows the current regional T-bid rates. We're looking at Rancho Cordova, Placer Valley, City of Sacramento, Elk Grove, and Folsom. And the T-bid assessment, if it was increased from the current 4% to 8%, when you combine that with the 8% TOT rate, would put us, or the City of Folsom, in line with most of our regional partners. And so that essentially concludes our report. We just wanted to highlight some of the provisions or conditions of approval and give the council and the community the opportunity to provide additional feedback and discussion.
Any questions for the city manager this evening? Commissioner Leary?
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for putting together all of that information, because I'd answered a lot of the questions that I asked at the January meeting, about the reporting and the kinds of evaluative things that we want in place should this pass. And I'll second Vice Chair Rohrbaugh's question, and that is whether this will be presented at a council meeting. I think it's beneficial if things are presented at a council meeting because they're recorded. And if anybody wants to go back and take a look at that, it'll be available online versus having the materials just presented at a meeting of the TED Corp. I don't know what their capacity is for recording and reproducing or posting recordings, but I think that's a good step in eliminating any concerns about transparency on this.
Great. And if I could add, we do have representatives from TED Corp here to respond to these questions as well.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Just to expand on my question earlier, I think I don't mind if it's presented by TED Corp at a TED Corp meeting, but I think the council should, at a meeting, we should publicly address that it will be held at this time when there is a discussion on where the funds are being invested, and then some reports out yearly, I think would be great, but that allows for people to publicly go to if they have a project or something, or they want to kind of know how, everything's kind of getting made, they can go to that TED Corp meeting, and that increases public ability to do so. So I don't think many people know that that's a public meeting. I don't think many people will come, Joe. But I think the more vocal we can be about when the meeting is being held, when this discussion is happening, the better off, the more transparency and trust that we can build.
And if it's okay for me to comment, that's kind of the reason for this meeting, is to get this type of feedback. And what we would intend to is take this feedback and at the 27th meeting have a revised version that would add a little more detail to that.
All right, do we have any public comment this evening?
Yeah, you have one request to speak under this item from Eileen Reynolds.
Good evening. I'm Eileen Reynolds. I'm the immediate past chair of TED Corp. I didn't expect to be the only speaker, but I just want to reiterate that we spoke with you the last time that this was presented. I appreciate you hearing us at that point. We think this is an awesome way to bring in some pretty cool projects to give Folsom some more leverage to get some neat infrastructure type project type things here where we can bring more tourists, more heads in beds for the hotels. So I guess the only question I have about the conditions of approval that I saw very briefly, I've not seen these before, would it preclude us at all from doing the consultant studies that we believe need to be done in order to, because it looked like there were certain things that consultants couldn't be funded, but I just want to make sure that we'd be able to, because we do believe that the next phase of this is to go through some consultant studies about what feasibly could be funded.
Sure. I mean, that's a great point. So we would definitely, go through this, and we gladly work with Ted Corp to make sure that we have those abilities. So as we've had discussions about this, and one of the reasons why, from a city perspective, a city staff perspective, we think this is a pretty good idea, is the ability to invest in those studies that will set up the foundation for future improvements to public facilities throughout the community. And so the intent of putting these together was not to preclude us from that.
Okay, very good. We do have the expert on T-bids here if you need him, John Lambeth, and also Joe Gagliardi is here, who staffs TEDCOR as well as other entities under Choose Folsom. But thank you for your consideration and appreciate that you're considering this at all to move forward, and we look forward to seeing you again on the 27th. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Before we move to a motion, I do want to say thank you to Brian for addressing, because of the presentation last year, a lot of questions came up from some of our public. And I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to address them. There were really good questions, really good concerns brought up, and you addressed all of mine and kind of got me over the hurdle, and so did all of you that put it together. So,
Joe, floor
I
is
didn't
yours.
turn in a blue card, but can I speak?
We know who you are.
Okay.
Yeah. Could say
Mayor,
your name.
members of the council, Joe Gagliardi here with Ted Corp this evening. I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about how we see the process unfolding if it's approved on the 27th. First of all, not only do you need to approve these expenditures, but our hotel partners need to. That's part of the process of a business improvement district, is that the hoteliers have a say in what gets funded, as do you. So that's really critical, that we do that. We have in the audience today some members of the Folsom Athletic Association who we've reached out to about them bringing together the various sports teams as to what the needs are. And, as Brian alluded to, our goal here is really as an economic driver to drive heads in beds that increases the TOT that you receive and the spends to our local businesses. So as we see the process unfolding, this is kind of how we see it happening. If it's approved, we then have to enter in and figure out some priorities and figure out what those are and what would be the most effective use of money to drive tourism and become more of a destination. Once those priorities are set, we have to do some feasibility studies on ratifying what those are and what the economic impacts of those would be. Once we do that, if we figure that there's going to be some kind of a capital cost associated with it, there's a pretty stringent process you have to go through to get construction costs, preliminary design, construction costs. And then if we decide collectively, all of us, that we want to bond in order to have the capital to do that, that's a whole nother process. So this is not going to be done in a vacuum. This is just the first step. And I want to make sure we all understand that the hotels are a critical part of this, because that's who really is our stakeholders in addition to you. If you have any questions about process and the assurances that you have and so forth, John Lambeth, who wrote the legislation that created this in the very beginning, is here to answer any questions. Or if there's people in the audience that have came to help support this, because somebody like Snooks can tell you, Jim Snook can tell you, when there's something going on in one of our hotels, the businesses benefit. And that's the multiplier effect of tourism, is not only is it that someone's staying in the hotel and paying a bed tax, but they're also supporting our local businesses. So be happy to answer any questions. We're excited and anxious to see this move forward so that we can do more for the community. The other thing I want to assure you to make sure call out is Brian articulated this. This 4% is strictly for this. There is no administration costs out. There's nothing else other than to do those studies that we talked about earlier to justify our ability to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a couple of late entries to the public comment. Jim Snook, come on up, and Dean Williams, you'll follow him.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. First of all, I just want to say I was not asked to be here, but I found out about this. And just because of my experience with our historic Folsom P-bid, which the property owners, similar to the hotels, we voted to have our business improvement district. And it's been about 18 years ago, but I'm sure all of you have seen the results of that. So it's been incredible. I'm a huge fan of it. I mean, I can't imagine not having it. So I saw this and I thought, I'm looking at that slide thinking Folsom's a little behind and you know, the Measure G didn't pass. We need other ways to attract people down here. And if we can get people from out of town to stay, it's a good thing. It helps all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Dean, come on down. I'm expecting some really tough questions from Mr. Lambeth here since he's been waiting.
Nah. First of all, I don't know why all the people in the bright yellow here, but I didn't do it. So I just want you to know that. So I'm here tonight representing the FAA as well as a resident. I'm on the Parks and Rec Commission, but I'm here as really as a resident, but also for our youth sports. We've been having some great conversations in regards to this project starting, and I think everybody's pretty much aware that youth sports brings in a lot of money to this community, and it's if you build it, they will come. If we get more fields for soccer, they will come. If we get more basketball courts, we'll get tournaments for that and for volleyball, and it makes this community that much better. We are known for having tournaments here, and people love coming here. We just can't handle enough of it. So I look at that as an opportunity for Folsom to step up and get back into the game. We're kind of getting run around in circles by a few of our neighbors, which is a little frustrating. And I think we need to step up. This is an opportunity to build that and get back up where I think we should be. In addition to that, some of the stuff we've been talking about is reusing or making some changes to existing buildings around our town. And part of it is at the older end of Folsom, down by where Limby Park is and down there. And if we could work some ways to maybe restructure some of the buildings down there, we can build a sports center area down there that will help with the redevelopment down there. So there's a lot of areas we're to look at and to talk about. And so I'm real excited about the opportunity and having the community involved and oversight on this and keeping track that makes sure it goes to projects that will benefit the whole community. So that's it, and I'm short. Look at that, not bad, huh?
Thanks, Dean.
You no further request to speak on this item.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I don't think we have any action this evening on this item.
I just have one question.
Sure.
Sorry, meant to ask earlier. I talked to our finance director, with some questions about how much money can be bonded, against the income from this increase. Do you want to address that, or I don't know if Joe or Mr. Lambeth want to address that?
As Joe mentioned, with this process, the way it's going now, we can't do any bonding on it, so we'd have to start another process. It would depend on what percentage of the 4% was determined to be used for bonding. We could have as much as 10 million, 15 million, depending on what the revenue is for it. So there's questions on how much it would be based on the percent that could be used for it.
Would that be 10 or 15 million annually or over time?
Total.
And until the end of this.
Yeah, so you bring up a really good point. So what's being proposed is to increase the assessment by 4% through the existing term, which ends in 2032. And so if you're issuing bonds, you probably would have a, let's just say a 30-year time period. So there's more that would need to be done, right? To actually get, a bond issuance done, we'd have to, get agreement from the hotel owners to basically extend it to 2050 or whatever it is, because then you could actually bond against it, because how the bond works is basically you take out a mortgage and then you pay it from the revenues that are generated on an annual basis. And the hope is that with that investment, we're able to get more hotel stays, more activity, more people in our businesses, shopping at our stores and all that sort of thing. So this, in many ways, as Mr. Gagliardi mentioned, is kind of the first phase. So we have revenue with the intent to focus on physical infrastructure, but yeah, at the beginning, a lot of it's going to go into the feasibility studies and those types of things to make sure that it's financially feasible. So just to be clear. So this probably would be phase one. We have this approved to 2032, but in the next 12 to 24 months, depending on the findings, and if the hotel owners are open to it, they say, hey, we really like what these studies say, and so we want to extend the T-bid at this current structure for an additional year period, which would then make it eligible for the bond financing.
Okay, so because a lot of the projects that are, that have been talked about are pretty expensive projects, and so I wanted
Right.
to know how much money might be available to move those along. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the city manager's report.
Oh, shoot, already. Okay, Mayor, members of the council, just a couple updates. It was reported earlier this month that Intel has officially listed its Folsom campus for sale, and the campus totals approximately 1.6 million square feet. Intel has committed to leasing back 1 million square feet for the next 12 years, ensuring a long-term operational presence in Folsom, which is really great news. For a while, we weren't sure exactly what was going to come out of this, so that is great. This leaves roughly 650,000 square feet available for future leasing, new tenants, or potential redevelopment. We're grateful for the partnership and the investment that Intel has put forward into the community for many years, and we're glad that they have a long-term plan that they continue to follow. Just as a reminder, the city seeks public safety volunteers. Volunteers are needed to help support public safety in Folsom. Folsom citizens assisting public safety CAPS. CAPS volunteers support Folsom's police and fire departments, assisting with various public safety functions. Applications for the 2026 program will be available on January 15th, and completed applications are due February 2nd. For more information, visit the city's website. Also, I see some friends here. I'd like to recognize the Folsom Community Emergency Response Team. CERT volunteers enhance community safety, assisting the Folsom Fire Department with first aid, light search and rescue, and firefighter rehabilitation during large-scale incidents. To register or learn more, visit academy.folsomcert.org. Also, if you're interested and want to help shape the future of the Natoma Station's landscaping and lighting district, we invite residents, Natoma Station residents, to attend one of two upcoming community outreach meetings to learn about the proposed formation of Maintenance Assessment District number 2025-02 and how it could impact future neighborhood maintenance in Natoma Station. Those meeting dates, actually, I can't remember those meeting dates. I didn't. Can I get a reminder? Ms. Kelly?
Yeah, it's next week.
Okay.
I'll turn this on. I have this on my calendar for both of them. So it's actually Thursday, the 22nd, and the other date is the 29th. I think it's the following Thursday. 22nd, 29th here at 6 p.m.
Okay, in this meeting. So thank you, Councilmember Leary. That concludes my report.
Council comments. Councilmember Kozlowski.
Nothing tonight, except everybody please drive safely.
Vice Mayor Gorba.
I had the same feeling Dean Williams did when you guys all walked in, like, who's getting in trouble? But I know that this is for a much bigger reason. So my heart goes out to you, my prayers and thoughts to the family, but also to all of those that got to work with him. And then also to the city too. I mean, thank you so much to Tom for all of the all his service to our city, and that can't be understated. So thank you for all being here.
Councilmember Leary.
I want to thank the Friends of Folsom Parkway, who have been doing a lot of community service in the Natoma Station area. They've conducted 3 work days in the neighborhood so far, and that is to clear all of the ladder fuels from our open spaces, which are now waiting to be chipped. Looking forward to finding some volunteers to help us all with that, along with our park staff, who've been doing a great job of backing them up. I also want to thank our communications director, Christine, for working on creating, hopefully, a mechanism for each council member to communicate with residents in our district, because right now the only things available are things like Facebook or Nextdoor, and not everybody logs on to those. And I know it's kind of a big project and there's still a ways to go, but I think that will help us immensely in letting our district members know what kinds of things we're working on that are impacting them. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Aquino.
On New Year's Day, my husband and I welcomed an exchange student. He is with us for the spring semester. He is a senior at Vista del Lago High School. He is from Pieve del Grappa, Italy. He is an absolute delight, and the kids at Vista have been very welcoming, and he is enjoying everything Folsom has to offer. So the Aquino family is doing everything we can to strengthen our relationship with our sister city. And also my love and hugs go to Monica and her family as well.
I don't have any other comments other than I just wanted to talk a little bit about why you all are here tonight. So just before Christmas, Folsom lost a great man. And tonight we're going to adjourn the meeting in memory of Tom Pactel. I want to thank his wife, Monica, his family, and his CERT friends for being here, and also offer our deepest condolences during this time. Thomas Colin Pactel was born in Oahu, Hawaii on April 28, 1962. After graduating from Mililani High School, Tom joined the United States Air Force. He graduated from the Defense Language Institute and spent 4 of his 8 years of service in South Korea as an interpreter. He spent 33 years with the Federal Aviation Administration in several positions, including air traffic controller and air traffic manager. Tom's friends often referred to him as the most interesting man in the world. He had degrees and certifications in intelligence gathering, emergency medical technician, ham radio, and viticulture. He was even an ordained minister. Tom had many hobbies, including, but not limited to, running, cars, finance, mentoring, online shopping, and also preparing for the zombie apocalypse. He was not satisfied until all his hobbies were fully accessorized. Tom found purpose, joy, and friendship as a member of the Folsom Community Emergency Response Team. Tom is survived by his wife, Monica, his son, Benjamin Mason, daughter-in-law, Haley Mason, and his beautiful granddaughter, Charlotte, as well as a loving Flores LaRue family. To honor Tom, 2 Folsom Lake College scholarships have been established in his name, one in fermentation science, and one is for the emergency medical technician. Away on the website today, they're really easy to find. You can go and donate there, and they're with his name there, so please consider donating on his behalf. And I'm going to close tonight with a few remarks that were sent in by Ed Myers, Tom's friend at CERT. He said, "Give your time, give your talent, and give your treasure." That's how Tom lived. Be like Tom. So in memory of Tom Pactel, we are adjourned.